we're going to talk about migrating to Power 8, and this should be a fairly short one. But the reason that I want to talk about this is that a lot of people are still running Power 5, Power 6, and so on, and that brings some problems of its own with it. So we're going to talk about that. So the Power 8, when it first came out, everybody's always very nervous about moving to it because it's a new technology. Let somebody else test it out and figure out what's happening. Scaleout has been around since April 2014. So that's quite a long time. It gives a significant performance boost. I mean, truly significant. If I compare like a 750 16 core, which is around 223 RPerf, and I compare that to an 822 20 core, that's 346 RPerf. I mean, that's a big boost. And even the 12 core 824 is around 235 RPerf. So the RPerf boost is significant. But the other thing that's really significant is the memory and I/O bandwidth boost. The memory and I/O bandwidth boost, and I think I've got some slides on that, is really, really significant. In some cases, it's triple what you used to get. That means you can push through a lot more. All of the Power 6 and Power 7 and earlier servers and upgrades have been withdrawn for some time. So what that means is if you want to upgrade a Power 6 or a Power 7 to add a CPU card or some memory, you're going to have to go out on the used market for that. IBM also just recently announced that all of the Power 7 Plus servers, except the 720, 750, and 760, are going to be withdrawn on November 30th this year. And all the upgrades will be withdrawn at that time as well. So the moral of that story is if you're looking to buy Power 7 Plus, like 710Ds, 730Ds, or 770Ds, if that's what you have to buy, you need to be buying them before November 30th. Power 8 is significantly cheaper. I just ran some configs of Power 8 servers versus Power 7 Pluses, and I was really shocked at the price difference. Either they've bumped the price on the Power 7 Plus or they've lowered the price on the Power 8, but either way, the Power 8 won. Additionally, the Power 8 servers, the small scale-out ones, have a lot more disk bays and more slots than the equivalent Power 7 Pluses. So if you want servers that you're doing things with internal disk or that you need additional cards for, you don't need necessarily to add I/O drawers. If you have an 824 and you have 11 slots, that's a lot more than what you get with a 730 with, I think it's 6 slots. So you can actually put a lot more cards in there. Plus the bus is much better able to handle those 10 gig network and 8 gig fiber cards. And then because of the RPerf increase, you can reduce cores. That can lead to software savings. And from a redundancy point of view, the Power 8 scale-out servers have hot plug slots. The Power 7 Plus, so like the 710 through 740, did not have hot plug slots. So if a card went bad, you had to actually power the server off to remove that card. So that's a nice RAS addition. This is just showing you some of the RPerf estimates. So IBM for Power 8 published SMT8 4, 2, and 1 RPerf numbers. I actually turned those into percentages because I was curious. So when you run a Power 8 server, it's going to come up in SMT4 mode. You have to be at AIX 7.1 specific TL to get to SMT8, but that's only going to get you about a 7% boost anyway. So when I quote RPerf numbers for the Power 8s, I use the SMT4 number because that's reasonable to compare to the Power 7. But you can see here that a 770 32 core is 410 RPerf. A 24 core 824 is 394. So if you don't need, that's pretty close. If you think about it, the 410 and the 394, but I'm running the same workload in 24 cores instead of 32. So right there, if you think about things like Oracle licensing, there could be a significant savings in dollars. And then you compare that to, for instance, a 824, an 870, and the RPerf is just so significant. Just the 32 core is 630 RPerf. So if you're straining and looking to have to go to another node on your 770 to get to 48 cores, you may be better to go to the Power 8 and get the performance boost that way. I calculated out this SMT numbers per core. IBM does not publish these, so please keep in mind it's a calculation. It's basically, 91.1 divided by 6. All right. So let's look at the bandwidth, because this is where it gets really interesting. So if I compare the 770D to the 870, right now the memory bandwidth per node on a 770 is 272 gigabytes per second. That's a maximum. On an 870, it's 922. So that's a threefold improvement in memory bandwidth. It's going to really help things if you're running things like SAS or any kind of big data or anything like that, anything that's memory or bound. And for I/O, we go from 80 gigabytes per second per node to 256 gigabytes per second. That's a huge increase. And these guys are just basically bandwidth beasts. So you want to keep that in mind. And then for the smaller boxes, the 740, the 550, I plugged some stuff in here. So you can see the peak memory bandwidth on a 740 is around 136. It's like 128 on a 550. I go to an 824 and I'm at 384. So again, the bandwidth difference is really significant. And I/O, you can see, on your older servers, you're getting like between 9 and 80. You go to the 814, which is the 4U single socket, or the 2U 4U 2 socket, and you're at 192 gigabytes a second. That's pretty spectacular. And then I plug the RPERFs in too to give you a feel. Again, those are all SMT4 RPERFs. And then just giving you a feel for the different slots that you have. The numbers here, if it says 11 or 7, that's 11 if it's 2 sockets, 7 if it's single socket. So, but I just wanted to give you an idea that you have a lot more internal slots. So I mentioned the pricing, and I said that Power8 is significantly cheaper than Power 7 Plus. Plus, you've got the additional savings from reduction in cores. So I was doing a comparison with a 32 gig 12-core 822 to a 32 gig 16-core 740D. And then just for grins, I put 128 gig on the S822. 740, where the memory matched, cost 1.6 times, and this is list price, what the 822 did. When I went to 128 gig on the 822, the 740 cost 1.4 times. And I had, 23 more RPERF. That's just an example of some of the differences, and I'm seeing it consistently whenever I do Power 7 versus Power 8 configuration. So having said that Power 8 is absolutely awesome and you should all go there, why don't people do it? Well, the first reason is that it requires the Power HMC to be at HMC version 8. And HMC version 8 does not support any technology prior to Power 6. It also requires that you have the HMC at a CR5 with at least 4 gig of memory. And I can tell you now you really want 8 gig. And it does not support native AIX 5.3. It also wants you to be fairly current on AIX version 6 or 7. So that combination scares a lot of people off. Plus, once you go to version 8, you may require some firmware updates to your older servers before you can connect them. But there's solutions for all of these. The first thing is, if the issue is your HMC and you have older technology around, then you can bring in a new HMC. You could bring in one of the new CR8s. You could buy a used CR7 or a used CR6, just make sure it has 8 gig of memory. That makes it very, very affordable to bring in a new HMC, and then you can basically start with your Power 8s on their HMC and transition the older servers over as they're brought up to date. That's something that I've seen a lot of customers do very, very successfully. All right, for your older workloads, you can, as they're brought up to date, you can transition those older servers up, or you can use LPM to move workloads over, or you can simply, if you boot from SAN, you can rezone the LUNs and bring them up on the new server. And then with respect to the requirement to be AIX 6 or AIX 7, if you have AIX 5.3, number one, I think they've dropped all the support for it now. You want to look at using version WPARs, and version WPARs will run on Power 8. If you don't want to do that, the options are to upgrade to version 6 or 7 of AIX. And I can't stress for you enough how many problems get solved by being current on the technology, operating system, and firmware. And especially if you've looked at the press lately, all the security issues that are out there, Poodle and the SSL issues and so on, Those aren't patched in the older versions. Those are patched in the latest TLs and SPs. So you want to be at least at AIX 6.1, TL3, SP, well, TL9 I think it is now, SP3. Don't be on SP1. There are some bugs in SP1 that are pretty ugly. Same with AIX 7. The latest I think is TL3, SP4. I've had that up for a while. It's very, very stable, and that has the security issues patched. So you definitely want to look at migrating to those. And again, keeping your firmware up to date as well. So there is a solution. If the HMC is the issue, you can bring in a new one and just have the Power8 on that. Or, as I said, you can try to pick one up used. So I have here, there was an article I wrote on Power8 transition. There's also the announcement letter for the withdrawals. This is a very useful link. It's the IBM Power Code Matrix. And then if you're interested, the AIX Strength to Strength actually goes through every technology level and every service pack and tells you what they added to the AIX mix so that you can get a feel for what the value is that was brought, that is brought to you by actually upgrading to those different levels. I already mentioned this, but I wanted to make sure that I brought it home. The Edge conference is now the big power conference. There will be something in October somewhere on the East Coast, but IBM hasn't even set dates, never mind a location. So the big power conference that you're used to having in October will be run this May at Edge. So please, if that's a conference you typically attend, I would start working on it now, particularly since the cutoff date for discounted registrations is, I think, April 4th. And both Charlie, Claire, and myself will be speaking there, so we're hoping to see everybody there. This is just a number of links. I will put these two presentations up at the YouTube feed, which is linked to from the movies site. And right now that's up to date completely with everything up to prior to today. So on that note, I want to thank you guys for attending, and I hope you found this to be of value.